I am not alone in loving this woman, though I love her far, far more than they. Good evening, everyone. This is Stone Gasman live from New York City. And tonight we are going to be doing a very awesome 25th anniversary commentary for the movie that you see right behind me in the poster, Dangerous Beauty, co-produced and directed by Mr. Marshall Herskovitz. And he has graciously agreed to join me for this 25th anniversary commentary tonight. So, everybody, please welcome Mr. Marshall Herskovitz. How you doing, sir?
I am well, Stone. How are you?
I am wonderful, wonderful. Now, just to let everybody know, Marshall is streaming from LA, and I'm streaming from New York. So this is a very interesting joining together of these two massive cities on both coasts and everything.
There
Yeah.
you go.
So, and
Yeah.
just to let everybody know, Dangerous Beauty is available on Stars. We'll give you just only maybe 2 or 3 minutes to go ahead. And when it reaches the Regency logo, go ahead and pause there. Okay. Now, just to introduce Mr. Herskovitz to everybody, he's directed one other film, which we will talk about a little bit briefly in the commentary. And he's also produced such high profile movies as Traffic, Blood Diamond, The Last Samurai. And he's also dabbled in writing, I believe. In fact, I think the last movie I saw with his name on in the theater was Love and Other Drugs with Jake Gyllenhaal and Anne Hathaway. Really wonderful mature love story, and I saw it twice in the theater actually because I always regretted not seeing Dangerous Beauty in the theater because I was in the Navy at the time. But I told people, hey, go check out Love and Other Drugs. It's wonderful. So just to say hi real quick to Rob Gasper. Hello, Marshall. Thank you very much. So great that you're here. Yeah, Rob is very much a regular, and he's very, he loves my
Hello, Rob.
commentaries, and so happy to see you, sir. So happy to see you come in and everything. So before we press play on Dangerous Beauty, let me just ask you, how does it feel 25 years later to be talking about this movie that you were obviously very passionate about? Please
It
take the floor.
well, it's the film has a life of its own, and the thing about making films is you realize very early on that they all do, and they will, they will confound your expectations in one direction or the other. And we love this film so much, and we were all of us who are making it were so passionate about it. And the studio had no idea how to market this film and put no money into it. And it kind of did nothing when it came out, except, by the way, in Los Angeles, it was an actual hit in Los Angeles. It played in theaters for about 13 weeks in Los Angeles. But people found it. People found it. And all through the years, you know, every week, every month, I would hear from people about it. And I'll tell you, there is no greater satisfaction as a filmmaker than to have your work be remembered. It's one thing for people to respond to it, it's another thing for them to remember it. And it's just been a joy to see it hang on like this.
I tell you, when I first saw the movie, and I missed it because I was in Navy boot camp at the time. But when I
Wow.
finally saw it on VHS, and I knew kind of what it was about, and I knew that it had the Catherine McCormick who was in Braveheart, which I saw in the theater, and I fell in love with her. I think as many other moviegoers did. And
Yeah.
when I first saw Dangerous Beauty, I was kind of swept away by the fact that, wow, here's a story that's never really been told before. I mean, Margaret Rosenthal published a book in 1992, which I have a copy of graciously right here. Wonderful, wonderful book where she talks all about Veronica Franco, her poetry, her her male admirers. I mean, everything. And the more you read about her, the more you realized how such a massive heart that she had, in that she looked out for a lot of her fellow Venetian women who were not nearly as rich as she was, or had the chances to get like an education like she had. I mean, the more I read about her, the more I'm just blown away by what a massive heart that she had. And, aside from being an honest courtesan, as,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I bought the book shortly after I saw the movie on VHS and everything. And yeah, I mean,
She led
and since then, oh, go ahead.
no, she led an incredible life, you know. It's funny, you know, that the woman who was running our company at that time, Sarah Kaplan, who's a wonderful
Yes.
producer, went on to do many great things, you know, came into my office one day with the book in her hand, and she said, "True story, most famous prostitute in Venice, the most famous poet in Venice, put on trial by the Inquisition and is acquitted." And I said, "I'm making that movie." That was the whole conversation.
That was the whole conversation.
That was the whole conversation. I said, "Give me that book," you know.
Oh, bless you, Sarah Kaplan. Bless you. That's wonderful. Well, I'll tell
Yeah.
you what, it's 10:35. Well, on this end, it's 7:35 where you are.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
got the movie all ready to go. Just one
So do I.
second.
You tell me when.
Yeah, I will. On the count of three, we shall press play.
Okay.
Just have to go through the stars
Oh yeah.
advertisements and everything.
Yeah.
That's done. Okay. Okay, just one more second. Okay, I am paused at the beginning of the Regency logo,
I
and we
am
will
too.
press play on the count of three. Three, two, one, and play.
I better turn off the sound. I thought it was off.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Yep. And here's the Regency logo.
Yeah.
Arnold Milchan, famous
You're ahead
producer.
of me. You're ahead of me a couple seconds. You
That's
were already
okay.
seeing Arnon's name?
Oh, not
Oh,
yet.
yeah, okay,
Well,
fine.
his name is in
Oh,
the
okay.
producer credits, or
Okay,
or actually,
fine. We're
his
good.
name
We're
is the
good.
first that appears. Yeah.
Yeah.
And here we go. Venice,
Yeah.
1583, the richest, most decadent city in Europe. Its women were treated like property. Few even knew how to read. But there were some who enjoyed a different fate. The following story is true. And
Yes.
automatically, we have these roses
Yes.
being
This was
flown
on,
into the. Oh, yeah.
you know, this was at Cinecittà Studios in Rome, where we built two canals. Um, in there, they have a huge, they call it a tank. It's actually a lake. And you know, this was in the very beginning of CG, and so we made some extensions at the end, but there's very little CG in the movie, and that's why you couldn't, like, CG is the background you see in this shot right now, and
Hmm.
then now when Rufus' names comes up, that's real. So and that's real, and we built it, and it was a remarkable experience. And had all these gondolas and gondoliers brought in from Venice for weeks.
Now, so 95% of this was shot in Rome. Is that about accurate?
Correct.
Maybe
Yes.
5% in
Yeah.
Venice?
Yeah. Or 98% even. We did about 3 days in Venice. It's very
Okay.
hard to shoot in Venice. I'll tell you, there are funny stories about that. But because CG was not mature yet, you couldn't do what you could do now. Now you could go to Venice and you could just erase every modern boat, every wire, every antenna, everything easily. In those days, you couldn't do it. So
Hmm.
it was just impossible to shoot in Venice, except in very small, we shot in a square here and there, that sort of thing. So, here's our girl.
Mhm.
She was so
Very
great.
rare for a woman at that time to be reading a book in a mixed female company, I believe.
Yes, yes, and it was she has to hide it because they weren't
Ex-
allowed to. Yeah, but her mother had taught her to read. Yes, and
on
so
the
you see here,
oh yeah, go
you
ahead.
see here, you see here already that she's not cut out to be like the other women, and she doesn't really even understand that yet, but it's just her nature that she just can't, she's bored to tears in this room and has to get out. So, yeah. And there's Moira.
And kudos to the casting, Mindy and all of them, and
Yeah,
costume designer Gabrielle Pestucci.
yeah,
I
I
know I'm
got
going
a
to screw up the name. I'm sorry. Yeah,
very funny story about Gabriella. I'll tell at some point in the evening when
wonderful.
we have a moment here. Yeah, the costumes, and Norman Garwood, who designed this thing and built the two, lagoons. It was really quite an extraordinary effort. Yeah, there was a lot going on here, and we did this for very little money. It was really amazing what we were able to do with very little money. I mean,
And
I
the
think the
budget was
budget
like
of this
what,
film was
8 million?
$21 million or something like that.
Oh,
And here are the boys.
oh yeah. This was a huge year for both Rufus and Oliver Platt, because
Yeah,
Rufus, a week after Dangerous Beauty, he was in a movie called Dark City that
yeah,
came out in
I know.
theaters.
Yeah, yeah.
And then with Oliver, I remember in 1998 I saw Warren Beatty's film Bulworth at least three
Yes,
or
he was
four
fabulous.
times. And he's one of the
Fabulous, fabulous.
funniest characters in there.
Yeah. Well, Oliver is truly great, and we had so much fun. By the way, Janine Domini's name went by here, the writer
Yes.
of the screenplay, and she's just a genius. She is so fabulous, and we're still in touch to this day. I
Oh
adore her, and
wow.
I think she's did such a great job on this script. It was a huge effort to try to compress this life into a movie. And yes, I see. Yes, Fred Ward. We didn't think we'd get Fred, but Fred said, "Sure, I'll come to Rome and do this." And so he was great fun.
And I remember when I first read this book, I was thinking, how did Jean Domini turn this into a screenplay? How did she do it? It's amazing.
It was hard. It was
Yeah,
hard.
I could
It's like
believe it.
we had to make choices. You had to make what
Yeah.
parts of our life are you gonna tell, and obviously at the center of it was this relationship we're watching begin on the screen right now between these two
Mhm.
people, um, where she loved this man and he loved her, and they were not allowed to be with each other. And I think one of the challenges we faced, and Janine solved it, I think, beautifully, but to a modern audience, it's very hard. They just go, well, why don't they just get married? What's the big deal? Do you know what I mean? They love each other. You have to really understand the mores of that time to say that was simply impossible. That you just could not do that. And so, and we had to get that across in the movie, which is, in this scene, she's asking her mother, how do people get married? And the mother explains that it's a bargain. And, it was to try to settle the audience other where choice. Uh-oh, I just lost you.
Oh, yeah. No,
Are
you're
you
here.
here? There you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, I
Okay,
lost you for
everything
just a
went
second.
blank.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, um, yeah. And now she's thinking about him.
And Daniel LePayne right here. When I
Yeah.
was in Australia, I went down there to because I'm a huge Muriel's Wedding fan. I had to not only get the Blu-ray, but I went to the video store that Tony Collette worked at in the movie, and there was a
Uh-huh.
poster that said "Thank you for hiring me." And in that video store, believe it or not, was a
Uh-huh.
VHS copy of a movie called A Destiny of Her Own.
There you
Uh,
go. Yeah. Yes. Right.
yep,
Yeah.
which
Well,
was the oh, go ahead, yeah. Mhm.
no, we had so many fights with the studio about what to call the film. Um, you know, first we said, can't we just call it what the book is, The Honest Courtesan?
Yeah,
Or just call it courtesan.
yeah.
And and I want you to know that the first deal memos that came back from the studio spelled the word courtesan as cortisone, cortisone, as the medicine, cortisone. They had no idea what it was. And the head of the studio said to me, we'll spend our entire marketing campaign just explaining to people what courtesans are. So you're not going to use the word courtesan. So it was taken out of our hands. And so we, cast about for a title. I don't think this is a great title, and then we found out post facto that when they were going to do the foreign release, that the marketing department had decided to call it A Destiny of Her Own. Do not ask me why. No one consulted me. Still don't know what it means. So just that's what it was. Yeah. So
That
um,
that yeah. Well, see, I mean, if the movie came out today, I could assume somebody at the studio would say, "Well, everybody's got phones now; they can look up what a courtesan is."
of course,
But I mean, then
absolutely.
again, back in 1998, I can suspect like a couple going to a movie theater and looking at this poster called "The Honest Courtesan." They might
Yeah.
ask, "Well, what's a courtesan?"
Right. Yes, they would ask, and I
But I
mean, but the
mean,
point is, there have been other movies.
and we,
What was MASH? People had to explain what MASH was. And that didn't stop that movie from being a hit.
yeah,
So yeah. So at any rate,
oh yeah,
by the way, I
hmm
love these two in this scene. I think this was a moment where
oh
we
yes,
realized we had something because they're both so connected to each other and they're both so funny and they're so present in the moment, and she's giving him shit just straight back, and he loves it. And you can just see the attraction.
oh yeah,
Yeah, it
hmm
was like, okay. And it's funny because you never know when you're making a movie, you know, the first day, the first shot, you look in the monitor and you go, this is the movie. And there's so many parts of it that are unchangeable from that moment, even though it's just one scene, doesn't matter. But somehow you're looking at a piece of the movie you're making, and sometimes it isn't what you wanted it to be. It doesn't look right or it doesn't feel right, and it's just a mysterious moment. And this was early in the shoot, and it just felt exactly right. And Boyan, the cinematographer, who was quite brilliant. I love Boyan. He had this idea. If I can back up for a second, usually in night shoots in movies, they make everything look like moonlight. And everything is a cold, silvery light, you know. And he was looking at these old paintings, and he said, in these old paintings from that time, everything at night was warm because it was all from firelight. That's how all the light was from firelight and lanterns and all of that. He said, I want to make the night scenes warm. And I said, oh, that's so great. Just do it. And he did. And it just had a special look to it. This was from the end of the shoot. We went to this lake. Oh, this was the last, I think, 2 days of shooting.
mm.
And this was a castle about an hour from Rome, where we did a lot of different things in the movie. Actually, we used it for a lot of different locations. Oh, here's the boy marrying this guy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Moira Kelly finally discovering her husband,
yeah, yes, yeah. And
and then
Catherine looking on
Catherine's
with wonder.
reaction.
Yes, yeah.
That was about as horrified as Daniel LaPane's reaction in Muriel's wedding when he got married to Mario.
There you, there you go. Here's Ollie.
Now,
I
I
just,
need to point out. Oh,
yeah.
sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was going to point out real quick that the actress playing Marco's mother, who is there
Yeah,
standing next to your own crab, is
yeah,
Joanna Cassidy.
yes,
And
yeah,
and she's been in a lot of things like
yeah,
Who Framed Roger Rabbit, just
yeah, yeah,
and she also did movies like The Fourth Protocol
yeah,
with Pierce Brosnan. I saw her in a lot of movies growing up.
yeah.
I saw her at a horror convention last year, and a lot of people go up to her to sign a bunch of different movies, but she had never had anybody come up to her to sign
Ah,
a copy of Dangerous Beauty, and there is
uh-huh,
her signature
uh-huh.
right there. And she said,
Oh,
and she turned to her helper, and she said,
yeah.
"Hey, get me a copy of this movie. Get me a
Oh,
copy of it because
yeah.
she hadn't seen it for 20 years, and
Oh,
but sadly she's only barely in it. I mean, she
I
barely has a
know.
line in it.
I know. Well, listen, we had an
Mhm.
embarrassment of riches. People loved the script and they wanted to, it's like, again, I'll go to Rome, I'll be in this movie. It's a great script and it's, and they didn't mind if it was a small part. And that was, and the same thing with your own crab. I mean, we just got great people to be in the movie
Oh
because
yeah.
they just believed in it. Um, yeah.
And that's why I say kudos to the casting department, because I think they just nailed every role with all these great actors. I mean, your own crab. I mean, everybody knows him from The Fugitive, but
Right.
I grew up watching him as the Bond villain in The Living
Yeah.
Daylights.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he's one of the most famous Dutch actors. I think in his
Probably.
country, native
Probably.
country. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably. And here's the scene where he gives her the bad news. And
Yeah. Oh,
we went by, there was a scene at the wedding where they're dancing and going around and around. And we did that scene in one take. I
mm,
mean, we did several takes of it, but it's one shot. And it's most movies aren't shot that way anymore. It's sort of the way things used to be done. And it was fun. It was a challenge because you had to get everything right and all the cues correct and all the people and all of that. But um, I love shooting that way. I think it gives you an immediacy and a sense of presence that it's hard to get any other way. And they were game. Yeah. So this was, there was a lot riding on this scene because the movie just completely changes course as a result of this scene.
yes.
So you had to really believe that she was just being just decimated by what she's learning here. Um, and I was worried about it. Until we shot it, I was worried about it because so much hinged on that scene. It had to work. You had to believe.
Yes.
My theory of filmmaking is that you're always 1 second away from losing the audience. You have to connect or allow them to connect with what they're watching. And the minute they go, I don't understand this, or what do they mean, or I don't buy that, you know, you start to lose them a little bit. And you can get them back, but if that happens too many times, you've lost them. And so, I'm always mindful of what is the audience's response going to be to this. Um, and making sure that in some way I'm watching this through the audience's eyes. That's how I was taught as a filmmaker, and I think too many people forget that because it's from the olden days. Do you know what I mean? It's
Oh,
from the people who taught me were all from earlier times, and
mhm.
they had, I think, a clearer understanding of that. So okay, so here we have Jackie.
Jacqueline Bisset. Oh,
Yeah.
one of the most ravishing women I've ever
Oh my
seen
God.
before. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Just
but
amazing.
even Leonard Maltin in his review, cited Jacqueline Bisset in this movie as, such ideal casting, such ideal casting.
She, I mean, it's like people just wanted to do the movie, It just, she just got it. She so got it. She so got the contradictions of the life this woman had lived, that she had been a courtesan, then she got married and became a
Mhm.
proper woman and had to hide the fact that she'd been a courtesan, but still had that fire in her,
Yes.
and she just carried that around the whole time. And then being jealous of her daughter, I'm getting ahead of the story here, but it's just a very complicated relationship. And, she was game for all of it.
And she has a wonderful scene later where Veronica is about to go hang out with Marco for a while, and she says, he's a client like all the others. Love him and
Yeah.
you lose. And
Yes.
she actually goes into about, well, you weren't as pretty as I was, and all this. I mean, what I read is that her mother was actually a courtesan of a much lower, level than Veronica Franco ever had. I mean, Veronica Franco was the most famous courtesan of that time. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't think I think her mother, I mean, this is just my interpretation, but I think
Yeah.
that she wasn't prepared, or, realizing that she was going to eclipse her. Uh,
Right. Right.
yeah.
No, she didn't realize that she was going to eclipse her. And of course, no one knows. I mean, there are liberties you can take with this because, as great as the book is, there's just a lot about her life we don't know,
Oh,
and
yes.
the mother's personality and all of that stuff. So we just came up with the story we wanted to tell about what Veronica's mother would be like. And, you know, by the way, this, you know, this is maybe my favorite sequence in the movie. We had,
The
it
training.
was, yeah, because it had to hit all these different notes, and it was at the heart of what I thought. The reason I wanted to make this film was I felt that the film was very radical. It was, it was sex positive at a time when that was not really a phrase that people talked about very much, and it was saying that you cannot put people in a box. Do you know what I mean? You can't say that an accomplished woman isn't sexual, and you can't say that a sexual woman can't be accomplished.
Yes.
And today, I think that's just taken for granted. But even in 1996, when we filmed this, that was still kind of a radical thing to say, and I think that's why so many women responded to the film, which is,
Mhm.
you know, you have to allow people to be complete and complex human beings, and part of that is sexuality. So, this was this girl at first resisting her mother, and then, you know, seeing, and a turning point is coming up in a minute. We'll see when
Mhm.
she goes to the library, when
Oh,
she
yeah.
sees what the opportunities are. Um, and I think it was important to us to understand, or to help people understand, that this isn't a modern dilemma. We're making a point by being in the 1500s and saying women had a choice, or
Yeah.
some women had a choice. You could be married or you could be a courtesan. And if you were a courtesan, this is what opened up to you, this incredible library, which, by the way, is a real library in Rome from the 1500s. Every single book in there is from the 1500s. That's a real place. They had never allowed
Wow.
anybody to film in there before. It was astonishing. And they were nervous as hell. They got us in there. Um, but that's real. And, this was the power and when she talks about Theodosia and Aphasia and all these women who were so powerful, you know, stand power, and that not just accomplished in creativity. Uh-oh, am I gone?
No, you're good. You're good.
I'm back. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. That that this allowed her to be creative and to be an artist and to determine her own life. And you know at that time, I'm sure you read in the book, the difference between a courtesan and a prostitute was that the courtesans basically they chose their lovers first of all, and they were more like affairs. In other words, they would have relationships with different men, and they would
Yeah.
see this man on Tuesday and that man on Wednesday, but the men would become very attached to them. They would fall in love with them, and it was an ongoing thing. It wasn't a one night thing. It was much more of a relationship, um, which is for the woman incredibly tricky and difficult. And that's why the mother says, if you fall in love, you're in trouble. So um,
It was more
we had
about the
so
intellectual companionship than the sex, basically.
well for the woman, you mean?
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, yes. Or really just for the woman, for the courtesans, it was really what they had to do in order to have their life. In other words, the price they paid was to spend time with these guys. Now, some of them they must have liked. I'm sure they treated them well. I mean, these were the nobles, But as you see later in the movie, if you ran afoul of these people, they would do terrible things to you. I mean, the courtesans were regularly beaten and killed and cut, and very bad things happened to them. It was not a good life. It was just in some ways a better life than having no freedom at all. Just a more dangerous life, put it that way. So this was a scene, by the way, where she finds something in herself. The mother's asking her to do these expressions, and she finds
Yeah.
she can do them because she has in her that she has these emotions in her that she didn't even realize she had. And then, um, talking about what men are like, this was fun during when we were developing the script, sort of like, how do you talk about men? Um,
Mm.
and the idea is that it only works if she could enjoy it. If she's not enjoying it, it's not going to work. It doesn't mean
Hmm.
she's going to love it or, you know, be what the be having the experience the men think she is, but she has to enjoy it to some level, or else it won't work.
And Rufus has no idea. He has no
No,
idea what's about to
no,
what
no.
transpire here.
Yeah.
And
And these were the real shoes they wore, by the way.
oh,
That was real.
wow,
They were very hard to walk on.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure this extra in this next scene here, I'm sure I would love to know what he was thinking this entire scene.
He was a model. He did not speak English, so I didn't really have any
Oh,
conversation with him. He was a model that the casting director hired, and he was completely cool with the whole thing. I mean, he was in that world. It's like none of this matters. It's
none of
like
this
whatever you
matter.
want, it's fine. Um, he didn't have to act; just stand there.
Yeah,
It's all on their faces. Um, it's just her. This was, I mean, Jackie was so great. It's like, I think, look, let's face it, I think we were all a little nervous. Like, how's Jackie going to be in this scene? And she was like, what the fuck? I mean, what are you worried about? Like, she was
yeah,
just completely cool and great. And she made it fun for everybody because she put everybody at ease. It's like, this is what the movie's about.
it's the
So
wanting that keeps us alive.
yeah, I
Yes,
mean that's Janine. That's
that's
Janine's line. What a
that's
great line.
100% true.
It is
100%
so
true.
true. Yeah, so true. And it makes it beautiful. That's the thing. Then that was, what I kept saying was the first half of this movie has to make this life beautiful, and then the second half shows you the price. But the
Yes.
first half is an advertisement for being a courtesan. And that's what it is. It's these beautiful costumes. I should tell you the story about the costumes because this is the first time you're seeing her in this beautiful costume.
Please do. Please do.
The costume designer, Gabriella Pascucci, who's now sadly passed,
Oh,
she was the aristocracy of costume designers. She had her own, she called it a house. It was like a palace where all of her people worked. And when you had a meeting with Gabriella, you went to her palace to discuss the costumes for the movie. She did not deign to come to our production offices. And so, we met with her, and then she showed us sketches for the costumes, and they were horrible. They were these, like, whatever the costumes you see the wives wearing, these black things that cover them
yeah.
up completely, these heavy things, they were exactly the same, only red. And I said, you can't have her in this kind of costume. And she goes, this is the way it was. They were the same as the wives. They were just red. And we had all this research from paintings at the time showing like this kind of costume, like these diaphanous, sort of like Roman kind of, toga-like things hanging off them. And she goes, no, this was just imaginary. They did not dress like this. This was just the fantasy of what they would be like. And I'm going, no, we want her to look like that. She goes, no, we're not going to do that. So she was absolutely would not be moved, and she was scary. So about a week or 2 weeks before shooting, Arnon comes to Rome just to check out how things are going. And he wants to see the costumes. So we go to her palace. And when we get there, I say to him, Arnon, we're going to go in. And I want to tell you, there's a problem. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I think you'll see the problem and we'll discuss it afterwards. So we go in. By the way, this courtesan here singing had this wonderful voice. She was basically an opera singer, and she was really great. This whole poetry thing. I'm not going to miss it. I'll stop the story because I want to talk about the poetry thing. But at any rate, we come out after looking at the costumes, and Arnon says, "What are you doing? You can't make the movie with these costumes. It's a disaster. You can't do it." I said, well, I can't get her to change. Then he goes, who's the director of the movie, you or her? I said, Arnon, I'm telling you, believe me, I know I'm the director, but I can't get her to change. So he says to me, listen, let me tell you what we learned dealing with terrorists in Israel. When you are negotiating with a terrorist, what you do is you set up a meeting, and then you send an intermediary to the terrorist before the meeting to tell the terrorist what's going to happen at the meeting so that they can have their irrational, angry response with the intermediary. And when they come to the meeting, they're prepared to do business. And so Sarah Kaplan was the producer of the movie. I had Sarah call Gabriella, and she said to Gabriella, Marshall wants to meet tomorrow at 5 p.m., at which time you will give him 8 designs for the costumes that he wants, or you will be fired. And Gabriella started yelling and saying, I've never been treated like this. I'm this is outrageous, blah, 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 blah. And at 5 p.m. the next day, we went to the meeting, and she presented us with 8 of the most beautiful designs I've ever seen. And she never said another word to me ever. She hated me after that. But she did it. She did it. And she admitted to someone after the movie that she did like the costumes. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So at any rate, we've missed this. I just love, she and Ollie were so great in the scene. They were just so, you felt that they were doing this kind of, oh, it's about to happen right now. You had to get the impression that they were making this up on the spot, because that's what really happened. They did do this. This was real. They would have these poetry duels where they had to extemporaneously come up with things. And so she's put on the spot here. And she comes through. And you had to feel like it's like she's doing the impossible. It's like she's walking on a tightrope, between two buildings in New York City. Um, and she just kind of somehow pulls it off. These
And
scenes, by the way,
Catherine McCormick, I mean, her how she approaches all this and makes it very believable, and how she comes up with the words very very carefully, and then
yes,
just hits
yeah,
them back at Mafio. Just it's
yeah.
wonderful.
She's also, the thing about Catherine is she understands comedy. That this is a
Yes.
comedic scene, and it's so subtle, but you can see it in her body language, that
Yeah.
she really gets what she's actually doing here. And that's why it's so delightful to watch. You see her discover the naughtiness, whatever it is, the get. Um, Oliver.
He's very confident he can match that.
Oh my God. Well, he's just so funny. I mean, he just has to
he's
stand there and he's
he's
funny. He's
great.
just, and he's such a great actor too. It's not just humor,
Mhm.
but humor for him is like second nature. I loved him even in The Bear. I don't know if you watched The Bear last year, the TV series, The Bear.
Oh
He was
no.
in that. He was fabulous.
Oh,
Yeah. Again, it's just, wow,
her
doing
ring
scenes like
as the
this.
moon doth glow.
Yeah, yeah. When you do a
Great.
scene like this, there's so much traffic control you're doing. You've got so many people standing around, and you got to get this angle, that angle, and people are nervous, and you got to get every shot. And at the same time, you've got to make it happen between these two people. And
Exactly.
and it's really the hardest part of directing is kind of remembering what's really important when you're in the midst of these very complex things.
Mhm.
Now, this scene, uh, these folks were very, very. This was very hard for both of them. This was just really hard. Um, Catherine knew that nudity was an important part of the movie. That she was a
Mhm.
sexual person and she was going to be seen having sex. But it was not easy for her, and it wasn't easy for either of them. Uh, and it's just they just had to get through it. That's all. But again, look at her humor. Even here, knowing how difficult this is, we do this thing, and she like can't get her thing
She
undone.
can't get it off.
Yeah, and the look. See, that
Yeah,
look is that's somebody who understands comedy.
exactly.
And for the audience, it takes the curse off it. Then you feel like, oh, okay, this is okay. You know, um, but this was just torture for both of them. It's like, please can this be over?
Well, I can imagine a lot of Hollywood actresses being intimidated by, the character and the amount of nudity being, that's
Sure,
required.
sure.
I read,
And
oh,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, no, you go. I think you're
Oh,
going to
okay.
say the same thing. Yeah.
Well, I read that, that like there were certain actresses like Drew Barrymore that turned down the role, and then she ended up doing Ever After the same
Yeah.
year with,
Yes.
again, wonderful music by George Fenton. As a matter of fact, it was because
Yeah.
of those two movies, Ever
Uh-huh.
After and Dangerous Beauty, I became a massive George Fenton
Uh-huh.
fan.
Oh, George. I love him.
Yeah.
Just love him. Just such a wonderful guy. So much fun to work with.
Oh. Now, what does her mother give her right here to drink? I mean, I know she has a strawberry later to eliminate the taste, but what is that exactly?
This is in case she was impregnated, this would make her, you know, miscarry. It's some poisonous thing that would make it so that she would not have a baby. That's what that was.
Really?
Yeah. Now, whether that worked or not, I don't know, but they did have those things then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know,
Well, in
he
real
just,
life, Veronica Franco actually had 6 children.
I
3 of them
know,
died in childbirth, sadly.
kind of,
And one of the many gentlemen, one of the many powerful gentlemen that we meet in the scene coming up here is actually the father of
uh-huh.
several of her children. I'll point him out when we meet him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But oh yeah, these serenades and everything. I love
Yeah.
that.
We decided that that was just not something we could handle in this movie.
Yeah,
It was just,
exactly. I
just,
understand. Hmm.
yeah. That was one little bit of CG there with the city in the background. I mean, that's all you
Hmm.
could do in 1997. Um, and then this was, this was shot at a palazzo at 45 minutes from Rome in another direction where this whole garden where the sword fight takes place later. We spent a lot of time here too. It was a beautiful, beautiful place. Some rich person's, some noble's place that's now like a museum or something.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Minister Ramberti, who was a real
Yes,
person, by the way. Now he wants to see her every Thursday.
that's right. Yeah. That's
And
how it
before,
worked.
yep,
That's how it worked. They had a schedule,
they had a schedule.
and
Mhm.
yeah.
I'm all booked
Um,
up.
yeah.
Oh,
See,
that hurts.
she's so got it. It's like you pray for that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I couldn't teach that to her. She knew.
She knew. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh, yeah. Rufus and Oliver's brothers. I
yeah,
totally,
they were
totally,
great.
totally buy it.
They were great.
They were wonderful. And oh, the late Fred Ward.
She loved Fred. They had fun together. Um, just this whole thing with the foot, it's like, um,
Mm,
but it tells, when you said she had a big heart, when she says it's just flesh, it really
hmm.
helped you understand something about how she handled all of this stuff.
Oh yeah.
That she was not frightened by flesh,
Yeah.
by sex, or by, the physicality of human beings. It says a lot about her as a character, and then, she's not trying to manipulate him. She's really just kind, and that's what wins him over. And
Andrea Tron right there, that he
yeah,
fathered several of Veronica's
yeah,
children. And
yes,
Francisco Montenegro, who we see in the next scene with her
yeah,
in her bedroom,
yeah,
she wrote a whole thing of poetry, a book of poetry for him,
yeah,
evidently.
yeah. No, these are all real people. It's
Yeah,
just
all real people. Yeah,
we
yeah.
couldn't
Hmm.
do justice to all the different relationships. We just sort of indicated that she was in relationship with them.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
And well, and of course, Fred Ward's character became like her sort of literary a literary educator of sorts, where she would help her
yes,
with her
yes,
poetry in
yeah,
his like he has like a literary salon type of thing
yeah,
where
yeah.
absolutely.
Peacock.
The servants are so funny. I mean, we barely get to meet them, but they are very, very
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
All the best courtesans have one.
Yes.
And I love Montenegro. I mean, he's just like, oh, whatever.
He was great.
I gotta deal with this now.
Yeah, he was great. We had fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ouch. Yep. Mm.
You know, Ed Zwick and I have a saying. Um, we argue who thought of it. But we basically say no movie can ever be too funny, no matter what it's about, no matter how tragic or serious. it can never be too funny. And it's
Oh
just
yeah.
true. Like wherever you can find humor, you put it in. It just, it makes it work better. That's all.
And there's a lot of humor in the first half of this movie.
Yeah,
Mhm.
intentionally and happily.
Mm. Hey Dan,
There it is.
lovely to see you tonight. Glad you could join us. And he says, "Oh yeah, this is a great
Thank
film."
you, Daniel.
Hmm. Yeah, he's awesome. He's a wonderful guy.
There's that castle again.
Uh, Now, one thing I wanted to touch upon, but only briefly,
Yeah,
is your first film that you directed called Jack the Bear, which,
yes.
from what I understand, it had a disappointing editing process. But I just wanted you to touch upon it real quick.
Yeah, it was a very difficult process from the beginning. Um, even during the even during the prep phase, it was a it was a wonderful novel and it was a wonderful script, but it didn't really work as a story. And I kept saying that we needed to rewrite the script. And Danny DeVito had script approval, and he didn't want the script to be changed. And I kept saying, Danny, you know, you go, you're 40 minutes into the movie, you don't know what the movie's about. You can't do that. And he said, no, it'll work. And it didn't work. And so we had a lot of trouble in the editing because, and I knew it. I knew it's funny because I had said to Ed before shooting, I said, I think maybe I should quit and not do this film. And I decided I wouldn't do that. But in retrospect, I wish I had actually, because I knew I knew the script did not work as a story. As good as it was, I knew it
Hmm.
did not work as a story. And so we had a lot of trouble in the editing. And the editor was Steve Rosenblum, who we've known and worked with since film school. And Stevie's done
Hmm.
all of our stuff, all of our movies. Stevie's done. Stevie's brilliant. And when the studio saw the first cut, they blamed Steve and they wanted to fire him. And I said, no, you're not firing Steve. I put my body in front of him. I said, you are not firing Steve. It's not his problem. The problem was always there. I told you it was there. And at one point, they brought in a second editor, a very famous guy, Paul Hirsch, and he couldn't solve it.
Oh.
And finally, we were 1 year editing that film. That just almost never happens. We finally figured out a way to do the movie with about 3 days of reshoots, very surgical reshoots. And they gave us the 3 days. And, look, I'm proud of the film. And I think, I think we actually solved the problems that the film had. I think the reason the film didn't do well was because it had a tone change in the third act. And
Hmm.
it turns out that when films change their tone in the third act, they don't do well. And I didn't know that, and we didn't know that, but
Hmm.
that's what it was sort of lighter in many ways and more comedic, and then all of a sudden becomes very dark and scary in the third act. And you know, people just got turned off by that. I guess I don't know, but I love the film, and
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of good stuff in it, but it just was a very difficult process. What can I say?
Mm.
Didn't
And
do
I was
anybody
going to
any good.
say, as an asterisk, I got to meet Miko Hughes.
Miko, he was
Yeah,
great.
he doesn't
Yeah,
remember a thing about the movie, but he was surprised when I gave him this. He's like, "Oh wow, I'm actually on the cover." Yeah, you
yeah,
are. But I think he's probably going to go and watch the film again now because I brought it
funny.
to him.
That's funny.
But
Um, yeah, Miko
Dan
was
Shine
great.
has a question real quick. What was it like working with Rufus? He has been a personal favorite since Dark City.
Okay, I love Rufus. We still are in touch today.
Wonderful.
I think he's just a wonderful, wonderful actor. He had an interesting process that was different from mine, which is to say that he would say to me, he would come in and he would do a take and he would say, I don't know what I'm doing. I just let me do takes because it'll take me 5 or 6 takes before I figure out what I'm doing. And this was so alien to me because I was taught that you just are supposed to know what you're doing and make it happen. But for him, it had to happen spontaneously. It couldn't be thought out. It couldn't be rationalized. It had to be instinctive. And I completely respect that. It just was so different from how I worked. And I would try to give him these motivations or whatever, and he would listen to me and he would say, it's not doing me any good. You can keep talking, but it's not doing me any good because I don't know what you're saying. I have to just, and then he would find it somehow on take 6, he would find it, you know. Um, I will say, he'll kill me for this. Okay. I will say there's a there's a point later in the movie. In fact, you know what? I'll wait till we get to it. It'll be funnier when you see it in the movie
Okay.
when we get to it. Um,
Well, we have to mention that we have a major star coming into the picture now. Right
yes,
before I think she became really big, but this is in
yes,
fact Miss Naomi Watts
yes. Naomi Watts.
in the role of Rufus's wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just a huge admirer of her. I don't even know what I saw her in. She hadn't done that much before, but she had done some stuff. And um, I just said, I just want her in the movie. And, this wasn't really a good part for her, but she, you know, she wanted to do it and she was just wonderful. We had this very interesting thing. There's a scene coming up. Uh, when we get to it, I'll talk about it. An interesting
Hmm.
technique thing that we found. Um, but you can see her here. Uh, Actually, she used it here. What she was trying to find the level of fear that this person had,
Mm.
um, and then in the later scene, it was anger, this incredible rage that she was
Yeah.
feeling, and you know, it's hard. It's hard to sort of just do that. Do you know what I mean? And I suggested to her that she try hyperventilating. I said, literally, just do 10 really fast, really big breaths right before this. It's going to make you feel shaky and weird and trembly. And she did it and it worked. And it kind of helped her sort of, and it's just very technical. It's not actually having the feelings. It's just the physicality of what those feelings do to you. Um, and here's her reading her poetry.
Hmm. I think Naomi Watts's performance, I think it's the quintessential example of doing so much with so little.
Totally.
Because I mean,
Totally.
her
Yeah.
her reactions to certain things that
Yeah.
Rufus does and says are,
Yeah.
I think, just pitch perfect.
Yeah.
Hmm. And I think the only thing I saw her in before Dangerous Beauty was Tank Girl with
I don't
Lori
remember.
Petty.
I
Yeah.
honestly don't remember what she had done
Hmm.
before. She had done something I'd seen her in, and I thought she was wonderful.
Hmm. And I think Rufus, I think the only thing I saw him in before this, I don't know if you would agree with me, it was the film that kind of broke him out, but Cold Comfort Farm. If I remember correctly, that was
Yeah.
the film that kind of
Yeah.
broke him out and made him recognizable, and it got him more gigs. But
Well, we knew about him because Ed wanted to cast him in Shakespeare in Love. Shakespeare in Love had had a go around and didn't get made several years before it finally did get made. And first it was going to be Daniel Day-Lewis, and then we lost him, and then Ed wanted Rufus, but the studio wouldn't go with him. But he was he was very much in our minds because we knew how great he was. Even at that point, he hadn't done much. He just kind of had it all. All right, so here's the sword fight. Um, we
Fred's like,
I
yeah, push me
I
forward. I need
called
to see this.
this sword fight took us so long to shoot. It was choreographed by what was his first name? Hobbs. He's passed also. He was a brilliant fight choreographer. He had done the fight in Roman Polanski's Macbeth, which is one of the best fight scenes I've ever seen. That was in that fight scene, the sword armor and dented the armor and wanted him, and he fabulous. And he just spent weeks with them. Every piece of this was worked out before, they rehearsed for weeks basically. And we had to shoot this out of sequence because of the light, because we could only use natural light. So we had to sort of switch. At one point, Brian would say, okay, light's bad here, let's go over there. So we kept moving everything and the studio was going crazy, but it ends up looking beautiful. But the idea is that over the course of this sword fight, it goes from comedy to becoming very dark and very serious.
Yeah.
And it's a big, long thing, It's like, oh, here's the first possibility of danger.
Yep.
It's like the Stations of the Cross in this, and she says, "You stay out of it."
Yeah.
And now, and he goes, "Oh, I didn't mean to do that," and nobody's meaning to hurt anybody yet, but they continue with the game, and they're doing poetry at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all entertainment for everybody. But then it starts to get serious, and the funniest part, the I fuck divinely those who wine and dine me, whatever it is. I don't remember the exact line, but they have to seem like they're making it up. And then this is like, the culmination of the funny part is the guys fall in,
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, this is gonna be a comic scene. And then all of a sudden, in about 20 seconds, it turns into something different.
On the
And
page
that's, I think,
and on
the
the
idea
sheet.
is,
Yeah.
what's that? Right.
Oh, on the page or on
Yeah.
the sheet, you'll never find a
Yes.
tongue more sweet. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he's stumped here.
He's just stumped. He's been drinking,
Right.
he's not on
Right.
his A game.
Right.
But Mafio Veneer was a real misogynist in his time.
Yes,
I mean,
he was. Yeah, he was a bad guy.
and he really wanted to get back at Veronica Franco for not
Yeah.
sleeping with him, basically. And then
That's right.
he starts going after all the courtesans in Venice,
Right.
with his
Right.
poetry and his bringing out the Inquisition and everything. It's just, he becomes a real nasty guy.
This is what it really happened. I mean, it's so perfect for a movie, but it was real.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's the turning point. He got cut.
Oh,
and now
yeah.
he wants to kill her.
George's.
And it's like everybody knows, okay, we're in trouble now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, this was all to do a scene like this that goes from hopefully high comedy to this very quickly. It's just, it's tricky. All the beats have to be right. And,
Mhm.
And how do we get Marco down the steps, but not too quickly, so
Yeah.
that he can't save her? It's like,
there's just too many people around.
Yeah. Poor Ollie hurt his knee doing this, but he was okay. Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this moment coming up is one of the most brilliant things Janine did in the script. It's just nobody expected that. Nobody. When we showed this in the theater, people just gasped when he punched her. It's
really
like, what a shithead! Oh my God!
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. It was
that's when you truly hate him. I mean, like in the beginning, he's being, he's just being silly and everything. Like, he brings up castration when Rufus is trying to serenade her and everything. And, he was affable, but it's at this point where he becomes a real villain and you just can't stand him at this point.
And you have to believe it. You have to believe it as he turns,
Exactly.
And then this, of course, is
this
for me. This is another favorite moment for me in the movie because it's built up to this moment where he just goes, I just can't deal with this
I can't
anymore. I have
I
to be
can't
with her.
wait anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. And he just comes in, and it's just, it's so earned by now that
Oh
he's,
yeah.
that he's tried to, follow the straight and narrow, but it's like, I just can't.
The expressions on the servants' faces. Mother Franco, Mother
Yeah.
Franco. She just
Yes.
runs
Running
out.
out of the room. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
And here we go, another love scene, both of them utterly miserable. Oh my God. I just want to say that I think intimacy coordinators are the greatest thing, that's come about in the last, you know, decade in our business. I think they're fantastic. And I wish we had had such a thing in those days. It would have saved everybody a lot of pain and embarrassment.
mm,
Um, some of this is a body double, by the way. It's not all Catherine.
oh,
Um, and again, that was facilitated beforehand because we consulted with her and she said, yes, I would like that. I would appreciate that. Um, and the body double was from California, and I think her name was Cindy. I don't remember, but it's like she was the opposite of these two. It was like, where do you want me? Okay, and like had no problem at all.
hmm. And Mafio, of course, is going to be
Yeah,
seduced
yes,
by
by
the
the religious
church.
zealot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, you can be saved, my brother.
yeah,
What? Like
yeah,
you photograph him right next to the sun, like he's coming off
yeah,
like God
exactly,
right there.
exactly. And then I did a thing here. I didn't know if it would work, but I think it did. Where you know Mafio looks down, and when he looks up, the guy has come across the lagoon. He was on the other side of the water
He
before,
walked on
and
the
now he's right
water.
there. It's like he sort of magically just got to him.
Yeah.
No one pays any attention to it, but it was sort of almost mystical.
Yeah, he walked on the water and then now he's
Yeah,
appearing
exactly.
before him like yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Young idealist.
Yes, young idealist. That's Janine. Oh, she's so wonderful.
Mm, wonderful transitions too.
Yeah. Thank you. So then, yes, and I love this scene too because he just doesn't get it.
Yeah.
He just does not get it.
Mm,
And, you know, and I think this was an easy scene for Rufus because Rufus himself wouldn't get it either. Do you know what I mean? It's like, we just had a great time. What do you mean? Like, what do you mean you're not going to just be with me? I mean, this was very true to who he was at that moment. It's like, he was just shocked, and she's just got to be like, this is what I do. This is my life. I
yeah.
can't just, you know,
She's
who's
got
gonna
mouths to
who's gonna
feed.
take care of me? I can't trust you. So,
Yeah, do not
and
ask of me
also,
what you cannot give yourself. Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
the point is that he betrayed her by not marrying her, and she just can't forgive him, as
Yeah.
much as she loves him.
Mhm. Yeah, this is where I was talking about earlier of Naomi Watts doing so much with so little.
Yeah,
Just the way
totally.
she moves her eyes in this
Totally.
very scene, like right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
So much going on inside.
so much
So
going.
much. Yeah. No, it's a very thankless part, and she made it into
Yeah,
something profound.
yeah,
You feel for this woman. It's not her fault.
yeah. It's not her fault at all.
This marriage is not working.
I was so happy to see her in David Lynch's Mulholland Drive
Oh
only a
yeah,
couple of years
yeah.
after that. That
I
movie,
know.
she really
I
exploded.
know. No, it made it happen for her, and it was wonderful.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh God, what's his
The
name?
bishop.
He was the Bishop Della Torre. I'm trying to remember. Culkin. What was his first name? I can't remember. David, I think. Lovely guy, just a lovely guy. So much fun to have around. Just a very positive spirit. Everybody was, it's funny. We were living in Rome. By the way, this was just living in Rome for 6 months was so much fun. I cannot tell you. I love Rome so much.
Mm.
And every night, people, we all lived near the Spanish Steps. And, after shooting, the cast, they would like have dinner and they would hang out and they would want me to join them. And they would be so shocked. It's the end of the day. I've gone to dailies, I've worked for 16 hours and I have a particular persona as a director, you have to, and when the day's done, I was like a marionette. When somebody had cut the strings, I was like exhausted and they would look at me with this mixture of shock and pity, at how tired I was at the end of the day, because they were just going to go party, they were all in their 20s and they were, it was all having a great time. So
I spent time there when I was younger. Everyone
yes,
should experience Rome once in
they
their
should.
lives. I agree.
Oh man,
I agree.
oh God, the Italians are so great. The Italians are, I'll tell you a funny, you know, we all had this experience of the Italians often look like they're angry.
Hmm.
I give you an example. We went to a restaurant one night, and there were five Americans and one Italian. Went to this restaurant. We had reservation, and the Italian one a member goes up to the receptionist and talks to the receptionist, and they start yelling at each other. And like a minute later, 30 seconds later, the owner of the restaurant comes running out and starts screaming at the Italian. The Italian is screaming at him, and they're like waving their arms around. And we're like, literally, like, are these people going to come to blows? And the Italian's a woman. This is a man. Is he going to hit her or what's going on? So finally, he just goes, and he stomps away and runs to the back. And we go to her and we say, what was that about? And she says, they misplaced our reservation and he couldn't stop apologizing. And that's literally what had happened. And we were convinced they were about to kill each other. And that was how the Italians talked to each other. I can't believe I did this. I'm the general. I'm the general. No, you're fine. And it's like that's just their way. And I can't tell you the number of times when we thought people were about to get into a fight and they were just talking about the weather. It's just it's just a wonderful city, Rome. It just is just full of life.
Mm.
Here's your thing where she says,
Yeah.
yeah.
But when she says, that you weren't as good a lay as I was, like, what the hell? What do you say? Like, wow.
Yeah. By the way, these were the last shots in the movie that we did. This was the day of wrap. And we were all basically crawling to the finish line. And, we all kind of just got the energy to do this last scene and make it look good, Yeah, so funny how things are done out of sequence.
Dan had another question here, real quick. Can you
Yes.
talk a little bit about the distribution process of this film? I recall
Yeah.
having a hard time seeing in the theater, which was a shame since I never
Yeah.
meet anyone who doesn't love it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, they did not market it much. They didn't know how to market it.
Yeah.
And it got a terrible review in the New York Times, just a horrible review in the New York Times,
Oh.
like really mean spirited review in the New York Times. And that just killed it. So it just died in New York. It died, it was it was not a terribly wide release to begin with. And it just never really had a chance. But like I said, for some reason, I guess because there was word of mouth in Los Angeles in the business or whatever,
Yeah.
it was a hit in Los Angeles. And it was the one city in the country where it did well. And it did really well in Los Angeles.
13 weeks. Wow.
Yeah, it just hung on.
Oh.
But it just didn't have, it was already gone. There wasn't chance for word of mouth to really help the film because it was gone. already in most
Hmm.
other cities. So it was just one of those things. Um, Incredibly upsetting for us. Like, you put your heart and soul into something,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
and the thing is, what you can't ever imagine is that somehow people are going to find the movie afterwards.
Hmm.
And the fact that people did is just so incredibly uh, wonderful. And, you know, I'm so that it found us, and that, and by the way, it's like this, there was a woman in New York. I just lost you. Can you see
Oh no, I'm
me?
good. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Hmm.
There was a woman in New York who taught a course about it. It's there. It became a kind of a cause for certain people, um, because it was about something that really needed to be talked about in the culture at that time. Um, so here we are with the King of France.
Hmm. And this actually happened to the King of
Yes.
France, where he was
Yeah.
accosted
Yeah.
at one
It did.
point. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fun doing this scene, actually, just sort of making it seem like an assassination attempt, even though he was just trying to give him a letter.
And
But
Jake
Jake,
Weber.
he was great.
He's
He was great.
perfect.
Oh my God, he just totally got it. It's like, oh, I know how
He's
to do
so
that.
hilarious in this.
Yeah. Yeah.
My favorite line of the whole movie. Oh, glorious architecture.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
That's my favorite line.
I don't know if I had to give Jake a word of direction. I think he just totally knew what he was doing.
He's not
Um,
even listening to the Doge. He's just like, okay,
no, he's not
where are the
listening.
courtesans? Just bring out the
Yeah.
courtesans.
I mean, he just sort of, he embodied this guy who had just, had everything, entitlement his entire life, and just didn't have to pay attention to anybody. He just got it. That's what I'm doing. Yeah.
We don't need to know what exactly was said. We get it.
Yeah. He wants to see the courtesans.
Now, I believe in the end credits, I think there was like 20 names for all the courtesans. So there's
Yeah.
like about 20 courtesans in the movie overall. But
Yeah, because in that first scene in the poetry contest, there were a lot, and there were a
yeah.
lot in the very opening, and the parade. There were a lot of courtesans in this movie, and
Hmm.
only a few of them sort of were able to be sort of highlighted. Um,
The poetess.
yes.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
Like right in front of
Again,
everyone.
comedy. This is comedy. It's like, people had to understand. I mean, it's serious, but it's the rules of the scene are comedy.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what's he going to think? I mean, to him, it's not a comedy, but to everybody else, they got it.
And the way she looks
Oh, that's
over at
very kind.
Marco when she walks up to him.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. And then this was, we gave a lot of thought to what was going to happen in this scene, and just how she's going to turn the tables on him.
yeah.
And just her ability to understand that his cruelty, and his sadism really came from something that was really the opposite, and that she intuited that, and at the risk of her own life, she intuited that if she wasn't going to be scared, that's how she was going to get to him, because everyone else was scared, and that never satisfied him. And so he would just
Mm,
be crueler and crueler because people were scared. But the person who wouldn't be scared of him, that had never happened before. And that opened him up to what he actually wanted, which was to be the submissive one. Um, Pretty intense stuff.
yeah. Yeah, this is a wonderful, wonderful scene. What do you yearn
Yeah,
for, King Henry?
yeah. And
And
she,
this actually
she,
happened. She actually slept with the King of France, and
oh, absolutely.
they got all these boats to fight the
Yeah,
Turks. Yeah.
yeah. He fell in love with her.
He fell in love with her?
And she became a hero of the city, heroine of the city for saving the city by sleeping with the King of France. Yeah, this is the moment.
Mm. So a lot of people I've shown this to, I mean, when it gets really serious here, but they always
Yeah.
laugh at him when he says, "Oh yeah, the king's a pervert." Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
I understand. I mean, it's, I'm not sure I would use that word. In other words, I feel that, yes, sometimes you get unintentional laughs, and
mhm.
um, there might have been a better word, but it was too late.
Yeah,
We weren't going to go back. There was no way to reshoot that.
yeah.
So, but this moment when she touches him,
Ugh.
her bravery.
Now he reacts there, but he doesn't react
Yes.
when she
But
takes the
when
knife.
he reacts, he could have been. It was more fear. You could see that he was afraid of being touched. She
Yeah,
saw then that he was vulnerable, you know, and then she takes the chance here. And
he actually
again,
lets her put the blade that
yeah,
close. Yeah.
yes, that's what he wanted. He couldn't admit it to
Mm.
anyone. He couldn't express it. Um, we had so much fun with this. Oh Lord. This was this was everyone was in such a great mood this day because it was so wonderfully absurd, like the whole city. To me, this was the essence of what we were saying about Venice. That the whole city was like, oh great, you know, she fucked him up the ass and he can't sit down. And this means he's going to give us shifts and they're all happy and applauding about it. The fact that they're so open about it
Yeah.
is like it's like it's no big deal to them. Yeah,
When he sits down, that's
yeah,
everything right there. Oh.
yeah.
Mm,
And they're all
mm.
you'll
And
get used to
I
it.
love the shot, by the way, when he first gets on the boat, and
Yeah,
the Doge's face is like literally right in the camera
yeah,
as you
yeah,
like,
yeah.
well,
And they're all cheering because, and she's a hero because
he's
she
a
did
hero
it.
now. Yeah.
Just their openness to all of it, I think, was a very important thing we wanted to say about the movie. That they weren't ashamed, they weren't embarrassed. It was
Hmm.
just flesh.
But Marco's the only one that just
Yeah, because
can't
he
handle it.
was jealous.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then this scene
But
coming up uh, is just some of Janine's best writing when she says, "The woman you love is not good, is not meek." It's just so she was so inside Veronica's soul, like
mm,
what her
it was all for Venice, Marco.
yeah
I mean, his father tells him that like several times in the movie. It's for
yeah that's right
Venice.
yeah
It's all for Venice. Like
yeah
he still doesn't get it.
right right. I had the wrong scene here. Sorry, she said that in a different scene. We shot it the
Mm.
same night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hmm. Oh, Rufus is just so good here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's devastating. You feel for him, but at the same
Yeah.
time, well, he
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
it's spun all around to this point because you rejected her.
Right. So I had a huge fight with the studio because there was a battle scene in the script, and they said, "You're not doing a battle." And I said, "We don't have a movie if we don't have a battle. You
Mm,
have to believe he's at war. You can't just say he's at war. You have to show it." And
yes.
they said, "You don't have the money to do a battle." So I said, "All right, they gave me like $20,000. And I went to Norman Garwood, the production designer, and I said, I want you to build me a part of a ship, just the outside, just the, and a deck and a sail. And then we have fake sails in the background. We're going to have a lot of smoke and a lot of this and a lot of that. And it's going to be from one angle, with long lenses. And it worked. We did it, and it was just like, in one night, in basically one shot, we said, okay, there's a battle. And we had enough smoke and enough explosions and enough stuff running around, but it's like you go, okay, it's a battle. You have to think through the lens sometimes to understand, what you actually need versus people usually just build more than they need. Okay, this scene, by the way, is the first scene we shot in the movie.
Really?
This was the first day of shooting. We had one day to shoot this scene.
And this has always been my favorite scene. Veronica Franco versus the wives, and
I know
how all this comes out. That the men, they don't write to their wives; they write to her.
Right.
Like, damn.
Right. And so this is, you can understand, this is the first day of shooting, and Naomi has to be at this level of rage toward her.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was really, and this was the moment where I suggested to her that she hyperventilate, and man, did she make it work. She just you could see her just trembling with rage.
She's kicking ass right here. She
you
really
can feel it on her.
Oh yeah.
All the wives are asked about their husbands, and of course she's the one who knows what's going on with them.
And I love the one wife that asks about where Cyprus is. I mean, there's a giant globe right behind you. Like,
yeah, this is what it was. Boyan gave this such a classical look. I mean, it looks like a painting. That wide shot, it looks like a painting. I was just so thrilled. That, I was talking about how when you look at the monitor for the first shot of the movie, and I saw that as the shot, I went, oh boy, we have a movie. It just felt right.
Yeah, Naomi is furious, but after she deep throat a banana, oh my God. And the scene is very funny, but it's what she says afterward, which is so profound, which is, a lady's most hard-won asset is an education.
That's right. She's not fucking around. She's, I know.
The way she
That's
her.
That's her. I didn't tell her
delicately. Oh, it's wonderful.
She just does it. Yeah. Yeah. I just, again, Janine, just to do that, to deep throat a banana and then say the most important thing is an education is just the heart of the movie.
Yes.
Yeah. And poor Moira is caught in the middle.
Oh, and we haven't talked about Moira yet, but look, the Cutting Edge is one of my favorite romantic comedies
me too.
of all
Me
time.
too.
And I know you said that you love the movie too. I've seen it to toe pick so many times.
That's when I first actually really became aware of her. I mean, I think I'd seen her in other things, but that was the movie. I went, oh, she's amazing. And I love this where she says he's alive.
Yeah.
The question that
Naomi's reaction. Oh.
Yeah. Yes.
Damn.
Yeah. So
now
this scene with Moira,
this is a great scene. It should be said that Roger Ebert gave this a very highly positive review, 3.5 stars.
I know.
He mentions this scene in the beginning of his review where, it's not exactly every day when somebody comes up to you and say, hey, could you pip my daughter?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But that's, the idea of just living a life of no consequence, of meaning nothing. It's just, that was the heart of what it was. And then you're going to see the dark side of what happens. It's not all fun and games.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think when she was talking about the Chanteuse from earlier, that got hit by a jealous lover, and now
Yeah,
who wants her now? It's like, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I can imagine that.
right,
There she is right
exactly.
there. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
women
that's
had it really rough back then, and
they had it really rough.
really
They
rough.
had to know how to game the system in order to survive, and that's
Yeah.
something that's hard for men to understand.
I mean, Janine Dominy gives Moira Kelly here a speech that is just
Oh boy.
it
Yeah,
really hits home. It really
yeah,
hits home.
yeah,
Leads to promiscuity of the body. Hmm.
yeah. I mean, these actors, when they get word, they're so and they're so it brings them alive. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because
yeah.
usually they're given shitty words and they have to somehow make them work as best they can. And when they get hold of something that really where the words are great, they it's like it it's just a wonderful thing, you know.
Hmm.
And Moira, I mean, that was the really the reason to do the whole part was that scene, you know. Now you're gonna see my cameo in a minute, in a few seconds. Here comes my cameo. Ready? Coming up. And there I am. That's
That's
me,
you.
the first victim of the plague.
Oh my! I never noticed. I never noticed. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
yeah. So,
Oh
all right. So we have. I'll tell you a really funny story about Venice. Venice. This we shot the scene. There's a scene in the square. This scene right here. We shot in Venice, and um, so we had roped it off, but the Venetians hate filming and they wouldn't pay any attention to the ropes and they would cross through our shots and we'd have to call cut because you'd have modern people just walking through. They didn't care. Um, and we're working on the scene and we have all these plague victims lying around. And there was a very distinguished looking guy who was watching us film for some time. And I couldn't figure out who he was, a professor. I don't know what it was. And finally, he comes up to me and in perfect English, he's Italian, but in perfect English, he says to me, "This is a disgrace what you are doing." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You bring these people from the South and you act like they're Venetians. They are not Venetians. They're from the South because they were dark. Okay. Because the Venetians are often blonde. Okay. So
oh
one of the plague victims lying on the ground sits up and in perfect English says, "We're not from the South. We're from Venice." And he goes, "That's impossible." And they get into this huge fight in English. They're both from Venice. Then the huge fight in English. We're just cracking up watching these guys scream at each other about who's from the South and who's not from the South. So, yeah. No, the people from Venice, they consider themselves to be a race apart. It's very interesting.
hmm.
They look down on the people in Rome.
What I know this film got a European release in 1999. What was the Italians' reaction to the movie?
They liked it. What I heard, I mean, I don't know if it did well or not. No one gave me any figures, but the people I've spoken to who've seen it all liked it very much. What's interesting is if you ask any Italian if they know who Veronica Franco is, they all know her. She's famous in Italy. She's a famous, the same way we know John Donne, or poets from that time, they know Veronica Franco. And
Hmm.
so they were interested in the story. I love them in this scene.
Oh.
They just, they knew what they had to do. It's like
Hmm.
you have to go to a place. It's so hard to be an actor, or maybe not. Maybe they love it. It would be hard for me to be an actor because for me, it would be hard to be this emotional, but they know that's where they have to live. Jackie was great here. She got to have a good death. I mean, it was a good part for her.
Oh yeah. I've seen Jacqueline Bisset in so many things. I mean, it would be impossible to count them all. But
Yeah.
she did like the Casino Royale in the 1960s, and
Oh, yes. Well, I mean,
so many
I first saw her in Bullet, and I mean, she was like the most
Bullet. Yeah,
gorgeous. It's like you couldn't even believe it that somebody could be that beautiful.
yeah. When I first saw this film, I wouldn't have dreamed that we would end up in our own plague in our own lifetime in just
Oh, how about that?
15
Yeah,
years.
exactly.
There are
Exactly.
there are people here in the scene that wear masks. Not a
Yeah.
lot, but there are a few. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And here comes the Inquisition.
Yep.
It's people thought we made that up. You know what I mean? This whole thing, they just thought, oh, well, that's what happens. But she was put on trial by the
This all
Inquisition,
happened. This
and
all
she did,
happened.
and she
Yeah.
was acquitted. Although
Mhm.
we don't know why she was acquitted. The feeling is that there were a lot of powerful people who were pulling for her, and
Oh, yeah.
that's why she was acquitted. But we turned it into something much more philosophical. Um, yeah. Now we're coming up to the trial scene, which was
Yeah.
one of the most challenging things I've ever done as a director. Because even though I've only made 2 movies, I've done a lot of TV, and doing a trial scene like that with 100 people. And by the way, it was probably 100 degrees in that room. And in Italy, when they have smoke, they use church incense, which is really a little bit toxic. And people were fainting. It was horrible. And you're just it's just incredibly hard to shoot these things because you have there are probably 10 speaking parts in that, so you need to get all of their reaction shots, and we'll come up to it in a minute. But what I ended up having to do was truncate the scene. In other words, I would do um, when one person was speaking, that we would do all of their lines, okay? But when I needed their reactions to what the other people were saying, I didn't need the other people to go through all of the dialogue. So I had to come up with a script that was like a short version of the trial. You're a witch. No, I'm not. Da 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 da. And everyone thought it was so funny, and it ended up being kind of a fun thing, even though it was so difficult because everyone knew exactly, like, okay, react to that. Oh, now you're mad. Now it was almost like silent movie acting. Do you know what I mean? Just sort of getting the beats that we needed. So
George Fenton's score is so powerful in these
oh
final moments.
yeah,
And I think Oliver Platt, I think his character really deserves this massive sting when we finally see him and
yeah,
we get the full scope of the
yeah,
situation. I mean, just George Fenton just gives it to him.
he does.
Gives it to him.
He does. Yeah, yeah. This was a challenge, and
Damn.
she got sick one day. She had food poisoning and
Oh.
had to leave, and it was terrible.
Oh.
We had to stop shooting. It was just overwhelming. Everybody was overwhelmed by this. It was days and days to do this because it was, I think, a total of 23 pages or something like that. It was just
Oh.
crazy because it was 2 days of trial, the first day and the second day.
And how you're lowering the camera as he's speaking, and then you
Yeah,
lower it when you get to Veronica and everything.
yeah.
You
It was
really feel
all,
the impact. I mean,
yeah. I
oh,
mean, this is all had to be, I had to keep this all in my head, basically, because there were too many shots. I had to remember what I did. It was just too complicated going around to have really a storyboard or a shot list. I just had to sort of inhabit it, basically. Yeah, and the camera's moving with him, getting closer. It's all very intentional. Increase the sense of threat. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now, how did George Fenton get on the project as the composer?
Well, I had initially hired Rachel Portman, who I adore.
Yeah,
I mean, I love her work, and that's why I hired her because I love her work so much.
me too.
And she scored the film,
She did.
and yeah, she scored the film, and the score didn't work. That happens sometimes. It just happens
Oh,
sometimes. And
hmm.
Arnon said, you need to find somebody else. And I said, well, shouldn't we give her another go? And he said, I want you to find somebody else. And so it was a very painful, difficult thing. It was really awful. And she had just won an Oscar. I mean, it was just really awful.
Cider House
And
Rules. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I just felt awful, but it just didn't work. And so we went to George, who was just so dear and so brilliant and talented. Um, yeah.
Among other things, he scored Groundhog Day
Yes.
before this.
I mean, he
Yeah.
can do anything basically.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's,
He is that good. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. This year in 1998, I mean, I wasn't able to see Dangerous Beauty until it hit video, but I
Mhm.
did see Ever After 3 times, and that score for Ever After that George Fenton does is just
Uh-huh.
equally
Well, he
gorgeous.
was,
It's wonderful.
I mean, that's the thing. He can do that sort of lush orchestral kind
Hmm.
of classical feel. Um, so it's funny. I don't remember the first day trial being this long. I think of the first day's trial being the short one, but it's certainly not short.
I wanted to share this real quick from Margaret Rosenthal's book. This is actually what Mafio Veneer wrote of Veronica Franco when he did this just basically this elaborate revenge against her. But Veronica, veritably unique whore. He actually says those words before in the
Yes.
movie. Veritably unique
Yeah.
whore.
Yeah.
Uh, Flimsy, flabby, smelly, scrawny, skimpy, and the biggest scoundrel besides, who lives between Castello, Ghetto, and the customs. A woman reduced to a monster made of human flesh, plaster, chalk, cardboard, leather, and wooden board, a grisly spook, a scabby ogre, a crocodile, a hippogriff, an ostrich, a knock-kneed mare. To sing of all that is wrong with you, your flaws, your faults, would take 100 concepts, thousands of pens and inkwells, and countless poets, the prospect of bridges and hospitals. Like, dude,
Wow.
get over it.
He did not like her. Okay, so this is so I love this scene, by the way. They were both wonderful in this scene. And
Oh,
this was again a really hard one because you had to believe that she was really willing to die rather than just fake repent.
yes.
Yeah, we had to really make that believable. Um, so we did her side, and it was a Friday, and we were running out of time. And he was going to have Monday off. And that was on the schedule. He was scheduled to have Monday off and he was supposed to go
Rufus.
away or
Yeah.
something
Mhm.
like that. Okay. And so we're running out of time. And the ADs are telling me, we don't have time to come around and do his side. And I'm saying, no, yes, we do. And they go, you're going to get like one take on his side. So I went to Rufus and I said, Rufus, it's your choice. We can come around and we'll have one take to get your side, or we can come here on Monday and do it on Monday. He said, I'll do it. That son of a bitch, he got it in one take. Never in the entire movie did he do anything in one take, but he
Wow.
could. When the chips were down, he could do it. He was amazing. Oh, it was great.
But seriously though, this scene is devastating. I mean, the thing is, every person I've ever showed this to, they are all 100% convinced she's going to die.
Yeah,
They're all convinced.
yeah. Well, because this is why I wanted to do the movie. Because how many movies, Looking for Mr. Goodbar, it's anytime a woman is sexual, she dies at the end.
She
That's
always
that's what
dies.
movies do, you know. And the idea that she gets off at the end is so radical. I said, that was the whole thing. It's like, yes, make that movie.
Day number 2.
Yeah. Now this scene was so hard to write. Um, Janine did a great job, but it wasn't quite working at the end. And
Hmm.
then I did a pass on it, and it wasn't quite working at the end.
Hmm.
And we were coming closer and closer to the shooting of it. And Arnon would call me in Rome, and he would say, "Do you have the scene done yet?" And I would say no. And he would go, you're gonna get screwed. You've got to do this." And he knew that I was like trying to. I was spending 16 hours a day doing other stuff. And he said, "You got to get that scene. You got to get that scene." He said, "You need to hire a writer." And so we hired Nick Kazan, who's a actually for years before, and hired right on this one. And Nick did a great job on the scene, but it wasn't quite done even then. So finally, I took some of what I had done, what Janine had done, what Nick had done, and did a pass. And finally, that was what finally made it into the movie. It took
Wow.
3 of us to do the scene. But remember, it's a 17-page scene. I mean, it's insane how long the scene is. And, she has these speeches that are so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Now, admittedly, it took me 2 or 3 viewings to recognize the actor who is eager, that guy who's eager to give her the sentence. I was like, wait a minute, he was in Braveheart.
He played the same part in Braveheart.
He played the same part.
Yes, I admit it. I'm sorry. I loved him so much in Braveheart. I said, just get that guy.
Just get that guy. Just get that guy.
Yeah, yeah, he was great.
He was. He's
People have, given me shit for years that I did that, but I just thought he was great. Why not?
It's a very interesting connection, though. Yeah.
Yeah. This moment here is my favorite for her when she says, when she talks about how much she loved sex and what the experience of sex was for her and how much she loved him. And that shot of her hand coming up, reaching for him.
Oh.
It's the heart of what the movie's about, is her proclamation that not only is it not wrong, but I love it. That's that's the radical moment in the movie.
Hunger still to be filled and inflamed.
Yeah.
And like I said, every person I've showed this to, they're like, no, she's going to die. She is absolutely going to die. Oliver Platt, like right here, is like, is this really necessary? Dude, shut up. And then Naomi Watts' reaction right here.
Yes.
Oh,
the regret and the
you totally
shame
get it. You totally get it. Yeah.
Grief. Yeah. To see how much her husband loves this woman. Then she turns to the men.
I mean, I know Catherine McCormick did several movies after this. I just wish she had, really, really exploded and, did some other big movies like this.
She, it's funny. She did not want to be a star. She loved, by the way, she still acts. I just saw her in something. She looks fantastic. I just saw her in Slow Horses, in the second season of Slow Horses, the thing with Gary Oldman. Yeah. She loves the stage. Do you know what I mean? And she just wasn't really interested in the whole game of being a movie star. Yeah. This when he
Rufus is gonna make me cry, man.
So much fun. It's just so much fun. Yeah.
It's a cynical trick.
Yes.
But I just find it weird that a lot of people gave you crap about casting the actor from Braveheart, because I mean it's a nice little a connection without being a direct connection. Like
Yeah. I don't
he
think it's
kills William
either.
Wallace, but he lets Veronica Franco go.
There you
Okay, I
go.
mean,
That's right.
yeah,
I mean, look, that was the point. You wanted to feel that sense of doom, you know?
exactly. You
Yeah.
get it totally in spades too.
Yeah.
Oh,
This is Nick's line when he says, "We're a strange city." I just crack up every
really?
time. And it
Perhaps
got
the
such a
person.
laugh from the audience when you show it in a theater because it just people got the absurdity of it at that point,
Yeah,
you
they
know.
did.
Yeah. Um, but this is where he says the line that you quoted.
Yeah. And all the Venetian, you know, I'm not sure what the term is, but they all knew. They all knew that, that Marco and Veronica were a special kind of
Yes.
relationship, even more than
Yeah.
them. I mean, she had a
Yeah.
lot of admirers, a lot of them wrote to her, she wrote back to them. But there was
Yeah.
something about Marco Veneer that was,
Yeah. That
the
was just
man
they
that,
were
yeah. Hmm.
as they say in Yiddish, beshert. They were
Hmm.
meant for each
Hmm.
other, you know,
Hmm.
destined.
Absolutely destined.
It was, you know. I guess that's why they call it a destiny of her own.
Oh, it makes sense now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just awkward. It's just an awkward title. I mean, Dangerous Beauty makes
Yeah.
not much sense, but I think it's a better fit,
Yeah.
if anything. But
Yeah.
thankfully,
It
in the
should have.
UK, they
Yeah.
have the Honest Courtesan title for the video
Yes.
release. So
Yeah.
at least
I
at
would have
least
been
the
happy with
UK got it right.
courtesan.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Just courtesan would have made me happy, but
Courtesan would have
that was
been
not the case.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He tells them to stand and they don't. And
They
they
just look at
don't.
each other like, oh,
Wait,
who's going to
look at
stand?
each other. Nobody has the
Yeah.
guts. And it's like, here we go. We're going to wrap it up.
See, but I
It's,
love this moment when he finally says, "No, no, the trial will take place tomorrow." And then when, uh, what's his name gets up and is like, "No, no,
yeah.
no, no, we're not coming back tomorrow. I got things to do, man. We're not coming back tomorrow."
Yes. Right.
Ramberti, yeah, when he
Roberti.
stands up,
Yes.
that
Yes.
moment,
Yeah.
it's like, no,
Yeah. And
no,
here he
I'm not
goes.
coming back here
Here he
tomorrow.
goes. And this is such a great line. I think it was Janine's line. I don't remember if it was Nick's or Janine's line. He says, he says, I'm standing because the guy said, stand up. It's like, I'm standing.
I'm standing. Yep.
Yes. And then,
Martinego
right.
stands up,
Yes.
and then
And then
yeah, he doesn't look
and
happy.
then, and then I added in the script the old guy who's coming up because
Really?
again, and it gets a huge laugh from the audience
Big
every time
laugh, massive
because
laugh.
you just have to have these moments, you know. It's like even him. That's just. I'm sorry. That's I went to the Frank Capra School of Filmmaking, and that's what you
Yeah.
do at that moment, you know. And then, of course, now he looks at the bishop.
Now it's time for you to stand, buddy. He's just shocked,
Yes,
jaw dropped.
it's everything I heard about the city true.
Perhaps we've been hasty, Your Grace. And he actually has the final line in the whole movie, and it's so awesome.
Yes, which richly deserves her.
Richly deserves her. Oh
Yes,
man, perfect
yeah,
final line.
that's funny.
Because all you need now is one shot of them together. That's all you
Yeah,
need. Happy ending,
yeah,
end of the movie. And this movie earns that happy ending.
yeah.
I think it really does earn it.
But I think most people watching it think we made that up. They don't realize that's what happened. She did get
That's
acquitted.
what happened.
Yeah, yeah,
I leave this woman to Venice,
yeah.
who richly
No,
deserves.
it's very emotional. It's just
Yeah,
it's earned.
Absolutely earned.
Yeah. And look at her face. Look how noble she is. My
Yes.
God.
And the
Just the
bishop finally
control.
stood up.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the background there, he finally stood up. And Naomi
Yeah.
Watts, oh,
Yeah. Just
oh,
everybody's story.
devastating.
Everybody's story. And he does this.
When I showed this
Oh,
to my mom, she just yelled at Oliver Platt, "Oh, get the hell out of here! Just get out of here! Get out! Get!" Oh, and
so then
George
they go
Benton's
off.
score, just
And
just
then,
goes for broke right
yes.
here.
And so I got in trouble with Margaret, by the way, for this final thing here. This final thing, it says over, the super, it says, the age of courtesans had ended. The years to come used her house as sanctuary. She and Marco Veneer remained lovers for the rest of their lives. Turns out that's not true. I thought it was. When I wrote that, I thought it was, but I got it wrong. But
Oh,
too late now.
oh, but otherwise she
No
was
one really
happy with the
knows. I
movie?
mean, the truth is, no one really knows. They could have been lovers for the rest of their lives, but there's no indication that they were. So,
Mhm.
but I mean, it to me it seems like they must have been. So who knows?
Did you go see the stage musical that came out about,
I
maybe 10, 15 years ago?
Yes, I did. Yeah. It was problematic. Some of it was great. Some of it just they kind of I think it had story issues.
Mm.
It's a shame. William Hobbs, Bill Hobbs, that's
William
who it was.
Hobbs. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, lovely guy. This is a perfect story to be turned into a musical. Perfect story. And I think that they just kind of took the wrong direction on the story, basically. By the way, they went through several different iterations. It was, it kind of traveled around the country. It just never quite made it to Broadway because it just
Oh,
didn't quite have it. And I wish they had asked me to be a part of it. I felt I could have added something to it, but that's not how the world works, so it's fine. You know.
hmm.
Um, yeah, just that, look, a movie's a movie for most people, but when you make the movie, it's a part of your life. And every shot we just watched, I remember what happened, how it was set up, what the issues were, what the discussions were. I hope it gets another stage adaptation, Daniel. That would be great.
That
I'd
would
love to
be
see that
great.
happen. I think there is still there's still an appetite for this film and this story. I
Mhm.
just, I hear from people so often. There's my nephew Michael and my good friend Josh Gummersall
Mm.
as my assistants.
Well, believe me, I always sit through the end credits when I see a movie in a theater that I really like.
Yeah,
I always sit through the
yeah,
credits,
so do I.
just to give everybody their moment,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah. Special
Well, in
visual
Los
effects by
Angeles,
Illusion
it,
Arts.
it
I
it
think they did a
used to
great
be
job.
expected in Los Angeles. It's not true anymore. But
Oh,
back 25 years ago, people would stay because people knew people in the business, and you
yeah,
just did that. But
yeah.
it's not true anymore. So,
But then again,
uh,
13 weeks at number 1, I'm willing to bet that a lot of them
well,
stayed
it
through the
wasn't.
credits.
No, I'm sorry. It wasn't number one for 13 weeks, but just the last 13 weeks in Los Angeles theaters was a big deal in those days.
Oh,
Um, yeah. Um, yeah. No, it was, it was
mm.
uh it was a roller coaster. What can I
And
tell
now
you?
here we are 25 years later, February 20th,
Can't believe that.
2023.
Cannot
That
believe that.
the
Just
original release date of Dangerous Beauty. And
remarkable. Yeah.
just in closing, let me just say, in terms of the commentary, to paraphrase Rufus's line, I'm not alone in loving this movie, but I love it far, far more than they. Look, it's true.
Oh,
I've
thank
seen
you.
this film many, many times
Oh,
since when it came out. I've shown it to many, many people who have never
oh,
heard of it, and they always come away from it, with with a sense of, wow, that was a good movie. I mean, and I'm
Thank you
sure
so
you've
much.
gotten more than enough reactions over the years of,
I have, I
yeah,
have. Yeah, it's just very gratifying when people bring it up. Um, it really is. It's just, you can't make that happen. It either happens or it doesn't happen. So, um, the fact that people will respond that way, it means the world to me. So I can't thank you enough for doing this and for inviting me. And, you know, it's so much fun.
and as Rob Gasper says, excellent film, cast, and direction. Thanks again for attending, Marshall. Very informative. Uh,
Well, thank you, Rob.
this commentary has been wonderful, and needless to say, one of the highlights of my life. And believe me,
Oh,
I will
thank
be
you, son.
forever
Thank you.
grateful, forever grateful.
Well,
Before I
much
end the
obliged to you.
stream, I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Dan Shine, Rob Gasper, Ben Grimm, Cable Channel 11, and Brian Trash, Cameron Cloutier. Uh, Thank you so much for all coming out tonight and joining us for this commentary. And just to let everybody know, my next two commentaries on Friday night at 10 p.m., I will be doing Turkish Delight, directed by Paul Verhoeven and starring Rutger Hauer. That's going to be an interesting one. And then finally on Sunday night, we're going to do Dark City, starring Rufus and directed by the gentleman who did The Crow, whose name escapes me at the moment. Yeah, but Dark City and Dangerous Beauty, they came out a week within each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What a double feature they would make too. Wonderful. So at any rate, thank you everybody again for joining me, and you
Thank
all have a
you.
wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.